Hi, I'm Dr. Roland Roberts. When I was the CEO of the Hoverboard company, there were two main challenges that I was faced with. The first was dealing with the Chinese knockoffs. We had over 300 manufacturers knocking off our product. The second challenge I was faced with was the fires, the hoverboards catching on fire, resulting from those Chinese knockoffs. The truth was that the knockoffs used inferior products. They used half the battery power that we did, and they did not change the weight limit that would support. It really wouldn't support more than 40 or 50 pounds for 20 or 30 minutes. So of course you put a 200-pound man on it and ride it outdoors for 30 minutes or longer, it's going to blow up. It's going to catch on fire. It's like any electronics that you overwork, it's going to overheat, and especially with the battery. So what we did was we had a very luxury premium brand. Okay, we were in Neiman Marcus, we were in Brookstone. I had partnered with Razor, who was in Target and Toys R Us, and we had direct relationships with these retailers. And so we wanted to, they had the real product, but what we had to do was we had to knock off our own product. But before we could knock off our own product, we had to create our own generic brand, our own knockoff brand that all future products that we developed and created would fall. We would knock off our own product every single time, and it would be sold underneath that brand. So we had to keep them very distinct, very different. But what that allowed us to do was, one of the other strategies is you wait as long as possible to file a patent. Because when you normally file a patent in the US, there's going to be at least a 90-day manufacturing window that's likely to happen before it actually gets to market. Well, that gives the Chinese manufacturers a significant advantage because they can knock it off much faster. And so the knockoffs were hitting the market at the same time the original, and whenever the original is $1,500 and the knockoff's $500, you can guess which one John Q. Public is going to buy. They're not looking at, okay, well, this battery's half the size and it's going to catch fire, or this other one's going to last me for however long, if I take care of it. So the first thing we did was create the generic brand, create the knockoff brand that we were going to run all of the products through. The second thing was to actually knock off that product. And then the third thing that we did was I got 19 of the 300 manufacturers, over 300 manufacturers that were knocking off our product, got 19 of them together to pay a large retribution payment one time, not towards future royalties, and then negotiated a percentage of the royalties and authorized them to manufacture, and they had an exclusivity in China. Now, what that did was it creates them competing against them, and it's not us against them. Okay, I'd rather Chinese manufacturers fighting each other than all of them against the U.S. and U.S. against China, which is the way they were thinking. So by us bringing some of them into the fold, setting some minimum expectations, or being honest on the box as to, okay, if it's half the battery power, this can only handle a 40-pound child for up to 20 minutes with a 24-hour rest, or whatever the stats needed to be, it just needed to be clearly labeled. All right. So that's how we dealt with the Chinese knockoffs. Instead of, which is a form of collaborating with them. So you can compete, which we had to do. We also started collaborating with some of them. And then we wanted to hedge our future product launches by creating our own knockoff brand and knocking off our own products at the same time. What that does is it bought us and buys us a 90-day window every single time we innovate and create a new product, launch a new product. So here's how we handle the second problem with fires. Let me tell you, it is no fun waking up in the morning and checking your email, and every single email is, oh, I'm banned by this airline today, and this airline, and this university, and this public place, and this, church has banned us. Good night. I mean, everybody is just banning your product. So there was a couple of things that we did. Knowing that it was because of the batteries, knowing it was because of the knockoff, had nothing to do with our product, not a single one, not a single lawsuit as a result, because it wasn't our products, wasn't from our patent. What we ended up doing was working with the correct political officials to help block the inferior products the dangerous products from entering the U.S., number one. That did cause some problems because it caught some of our containers got held up. All right, but we had to work through those. That's part of being able to, taking that step to get some of theirs blocked was going to inherently block some of ours, even with the right paperwork. But the other thing that we did was I was going on, and we had a team that was on CNBC and MSNBC and constantly talking about, look, this is not our hoverboards. These are the knockoff hoverboards. If you want yours to catch fire, then buy one of the knockoffs. If you want a safe hoverboard, then buy from the patent holder, buy from the company that invented them. And that message was not resonating with consumers, as you might imagine, because to them, a hoverboard's a hoverboard. Like, we're not going to get into and study this thing. We just want to buy it. It's almost a novelty. And so we quickly realized that. And instead of trying to convince John Q. Public to buy the quality hoverboard, what I did was use that in our favor. The question became, hey, if yours hasn't caught fire yet, you clearly aren't using it right. You're underutilizing your novelty product. The goal never was to have everybody using this as a real means of transportation. It was a fun novelty product. It was the single hottest global consumer product of 2015. And that was what it was designed to be. So instead of trying to make the fires and fighting the fire with education, public education, I fought the fires with humor because no one was getting injured from it. The YouTube videos were going viral. Where it impacted the business was when the regulators, the companies and leadership started banning them from so many different places. That's when it became more of a challenge, even though the two never were tied together. So when fires happen in your business, they were literal in my case, all right? But every business has fires. When you have a fire in your business, you need to understand the best ways to respond to the fire. You can attack, you can educate, you can improvise in terms of counter strategies, you can do flanking maneuvers. Starbucks did this very well whenever the cup issue was at its height last Christmas of 2015-14. What they did, everyone was like, well, you only have a Christmas tree on there and you don't have anything about, the meaning of Christmas. And so a segment of their market just really rose up and was furious. And it was a crisis for Starbucks for about a week. Fine. And they tried to come out and say a few things that were pretty lame. But literally after a few days, they already had a shelf full of press releases ready to roll off and options in case something like that ever happened. So they were able to immediately roll out a new program that shifts and redirected the attention from the cup to their new program for their employees and their staff. So there are several different strategies to do. You have to determine which one is going to be best for your particular fire. We ended up using humor. I think humor is a great one. Instead of trying to say why ours weren't the ones catching fire whenever consumers clearly did not care if they were ours or someone else's, it was just a hoverboard, and we created them and invented them. The only other option in a case like that is to own it and use it to your benefit and turn it around. And there's multiple ways to do that. Aspirin did that very successfully in the 80s whenever they had to pull everything off the shelves and then come back with things. There are things that you have to do for the public that don't make they're not common sense and they don't make practical business sense. But there are some things that you have to do to continue to have and earn the trust of the public. So when you're dealing with fires, make sure that you decide how you're going to handle that crisis. Know in advance different options based on every possible scenario that could go wrong. Whether somebody inside your company releases a video. Disney just had this with the alligator, and then they continued to have problems whenever employees were taking pictures of some ad hoc signs that managers were making, and those were then going viral, saying, here's how we talk to guests about it, and it was basically cover it up or say that we haven't seen any gators. And so there were problems. The bottom line, be transparent. Be transparent. Be real. There's a little thing called the internet now. You're not going to hide. Okay? Just be transparent. Be real. And part of that being real was, yes, we went on TV and we said, there's a massive difference between our hoverboards and other hoverboards, all the knockoff hoverboards. And even though they're not ours, you know, what have you done with yours lately? How are you using yours? I mean, they weren't made for off-roading, but hey, how are you using it? What are you? How long have you been able to use yours before it caught fire? Have you been able to go 3 hours yet? What was the temperature? Were you going up hills? Were you going off-roading? So there's a lot of ways that you can make it an entertaining thing, as opposed to a means of transportation and taking it more seriously. And then, of course, the second thing is whenever, and this is very serious, if you struggle with the Chinese knocking off your product, then the best thing you can do is knock your product off with it so that it disincentivizes a bunch of the other knockoffs. The second thing is collaborate with a few of them, because it's much better for a few of them to be authorized to manufacture your product, knock off your product, with some minimum standards that won't injure people, and let them compete against themselves, because it's going to be a much different battle for you, and you'll still get a piece of that share, as opposed to all of them ganging up against your company